So lesson 5 is looking at other factors that influence how well students do at school. So it's why do some students do better than others? And it's looking at academic achievement and how home, gender, government, and other factors indeed actually affect your academic achievement. So the objectives is to describe and explain these different factors and evaluate which factors you think are most important. So first up, we have two quotes from the news on Wednesday, the 18th of June in 2014. They are quite interesting and quite controversial as well. So Michael Wilshaw says that parents who allow homework to be left, miss parents' evening, or fail to read with their children should be fined. And the second quote is that poor white children should have longer school days so that they can do their homework. You might want to pause for a second and just have a think about what you think of these two different statements. Do you agree with them? Do you disagree? Do they make you angry? What alternatives would you put in place? Now here we have a graph of children who are all poor. So that means their socioeconomic status is quite low. And it is looking at how many poor students across the different ethnicities are achieving a good GCSEs. It's important that you remember that all of these children are all classed as poor, so they have very similar home lives, very similar resources. So first up, what is the graph measuring? Well, it's measuring good GCSEs of poor students across different ethnicities. And which ethnic group achieves the most good GCSEs? Well, that would be Indian students, with about 61% of them achieving good GCSEs. And then shockingly, you can see there's quite a big drop, and that the group that are achieving the least GCSEs are white British students, who around only 31% of poor white British kids are achieving good GCSEs. So that explains why in the news someone has suggested that white poor children should have longer school days so that they can do their homework. But like I said at the beginning, you may want to contribute or think of a different strategy to help these children to achieve better at school. And then think back to the conversations that you had with your parents or carers. How do you think that your parents' experience of school may affect your experience, or how do any parents' experiences affect children's experience of school and education? If a parent had a terrible time at school and doesn't value school or value education, then is it possible that they are passing those attitudes on to their children? And if parents aren't attending parents' evening or making sure that their children do their homework, then are those attitudes also impacting on students and their attitudes to their learning? Do you think fining parents who are not looking after their children in their educational capacity, should there be a fine, or is there something else we could do for those parents and those children? So last lesson we looked at the school factors that affects academic achievement. And today we're going to look at some of the other factors like home, gender, class, ethnicity, and government factors. As we go through the next few slides, there's going to be quite a lot of information. So again, I would encourage you to pause the video after I've stopped talking, and I'll give you a few seconds to do so, and just to jot down the answers to some of the prompts and questions that you will find on the slides. So the first factor we're looking at is parental attitudes. On this particular slide, there's lots of different attitudes of different parents. You've got a single parent, you've got a working class dad, which is the bottom left hand corner. You've got a mum in the middle who is homeschooling her children. And then on the far right, you've got quite a well-off family who are sending their children to private school. So pause the video now, have a read of all the different speech bubbles, of all the different parental attitudes on the screen, and then discuss with someone that you're sitting with or just on your own, have a think about what are some of the different attitudes shown by parents here and which parents do you agree with the most. But more importantly, I'd like you to write down 2 or 3 bullet points about how you think different parental attitudes may affect children's achievement at school. So pause the video now and complete those tasks. The next factor that massively affects educational achievement is the gender gap. So girls do a lot better at boys at every single stage of the national curriculum, including GCSEs and A levels. There are currently more women entering university than men. And some statistics or studies show that boys are now up to 7 years behind girls in their achievement by the age of 16. So using the graph and the picture, have a think about what the picture's describing. Why are the girls looking quite focused and the boys not so much? What could be influencing this? And using the graph, see how many boys get a grade C or above compared with girls. And then take some time to write down your answers to why are girls achieving more at school? Okay, why are boys achieving less at school? And write one fact on the sheet that you find interesting or shocking. Pause the video now. Next up, we've got social class. The University College London did a social experiment in 2006. They joined up with King's College London and they showed that the overwhelming factor in how well children do is not the type of school they attend, but instead it's the social class that they are in. The study reported that in affluent, rich areas, 67% of 11-year-olds were expected to achieve a level 5 in their English SATs, and 94% of 16-year-olds were expected to achieve 5 or more A stars to Cs in their GCSEs. Compare this then with children growing up in more deprived areas, so more working class, and only 13% of 11-year-olds are likely to get a level 5 in their English SATs, and only 24% of 16-year-olds will achieve a 5A star to C GCSE. So jot these statistics down and make sure that you have these in your book ready to use in any essay question that might come up. Pause the video now. Next up, we have government policies. The government has brought in equal opportunity policies such as the Sex Discrimination Act and Race Relations Act, which has made it illegal for schools to discriminate based on gender and ethnicity. The government also recently introduced EMAs, which is payments to students who are in low-income families to stay in school and do their A levels. However, on the other side, the government has ensured something called the marketization of schools. This is where schools have become competitive with each other, and parents choose the school that they want to send their children based on how well the school is doing in the league tables and in GCSE results. This competition has meant that lots of schools in the inner cities have lost out. And so all the students who have got good grades and good attitudes to learning and caring parents often send their student or children to other schools, and inner city schools don't have the same advantages. The government allows schools admissions policies that exclude some children, so the league tables also put the schools at a disadvantage. All of these policies have been intended to raise standards, but in the end has led to discrimination and unfair competition. This leads us on to school factors. At the top, you've got 3 very different schools. On the left-hand side, you have an academy, much like the one we're in. Then in the middle, you have a state comprehensive school. And on the far right, you have a library that is found in a private school in Bristol. Different schools have lots of different resources, and private schools have far more money and resources than the state comprehensive schools. This impacts on students' achievement. Pupils may also suffer peer pressure depending on what school they go to. Often in the state comprehensive schools, it is not cool to be clever or to do your work, especially if you're a boy. And this is called an anti-learning attitude or an anti-academic attitude. These attitudes obviously affect progress. However, if you're in a private school, the peer pressure is competitive and it is that you are cool if you do well and if you are clever and have good grades. So children in the private schools are more likely to then work hard. So the last factor then is ethnicity. Research has found that Indian and Chinese students do very well at school, whereas Pakistani, Bangladeshi, and Black Caribbean ethnicities often underachieve at school. Now, this could be because in the UK, we teach a very ethnocentric curriculum, and you need to know what that means. This means that schools have a curriculum which includes the languages and the culture of the majority of the students, while leaving out those of ethnic minorities. So, in terms of the subjects we study, what we study in history, what we study in English, all of the subjects that you do at school can be very ethnocentric and be focused on British culture more than it is looking at the cultures of the ethnic minority groups. Obviously, then, white British children are going to do better than those of Bangladeshi, Black Caribbean, or Pakistani heritage. Okay, in time for our lesson, I want you to start to think about which of all the factors you think is the most important, and then to start to evaluate how the factors may start to link together to form one big picture that affects educational achievement of different students.